Hello, my name is Daniel. In this video you will learn about components and how to modify them. Head bobbing component gives you a camera shake when you sprint, walk, or walk in aim. You can always create your own camera shake and replace them here in the component details. You can find camera shake tutorials in the description. With weapon block you can remove your weapon when you near the wall. You can change here the distance where weapon block animation starts. The coefficient of the weapon block are used in the animation blueprint to blend between idle and block animations. With lean component, you can lean to the left and right. The angle of lean you can change in the component details. Using look around component, you can rotate your head in the game. In player state component, you get the current state of your character. This might be important if you don't want to shoot while reloading, for example. You can add your own states and update them using update state function. You can move from first person perspective to third person perspective using view switch component. In this component, you can change the location of the camera in two positions. You also can change the speed of the camera blend. Weapon laser is a dot in the game that you trace from your camera. You can set the length of the laser here. With weapon holster component, you switch or remove your weapon. Here are handled equip and holster animations of the weapon. To holster weapon, you can use holster function. To circle through the weapon inventory, you need to use circle weapon functions. And to select certain weapon, use equip weapon type function. This function will find the first weapon of the same type in your equipment inventory. With grenade component, you can throw grenades by playing grenade animation from the weapon data table. You can pick up a grenade, you store them in the inventory and you can throw them by calling throw grenade function of this component. You can add a grenade right to the inventory. To pick up a grenade, we use child of interactable object. In this actor, you just need to initialize an actor variable with the row of data table. You can create an interactable object. To throw a grenade, we use a special socket in our skeleton. You can add your own socket to any weapon. You also can attach weapon to the other socket when you throw a grenade. You can find detailed explanation on the example of a new weapon in the creation of a new weapon tutorial. To attach a grenade to hand and then throw it away, you need to have a proper notify setup in your grenade animation of your weapon. You can change speed of your character by using change walk speed function. This function we use to run or get back to walk. You can create a new type of speed. For this, you need to add a new row in the enumeration and add new row to the speed change data table. Now you can use the speed in the change walk speed function. Characteristics component is used to store a value that you can regenerate if you want. In the details of this component, you can modify this value. You can set the max value of this characteristic, if these characteristics can regenerate or not, and the widget if you need. We use widget to show blood on the screen. To create a new characteristic, you need to change add slot name to have different save slot. You can call modify stat function to change current value of this characteristic. You will fire onValueChanged event after this. Des component handles ragdoll and respawn. In this component you can store statistics. To call des, you need to call character des function. You can also toggle respawn here. You can check if the character is dead or not by getting that variable. Using aiming component, you can toggle aim state of your character. Using this component, you can zoom if you have several aim4 elements in the array. You can find and change this array in the weapon data table. To play reload animation and restore ammo, we use reload component. To reload, you can use reload function from this component. Clip socket is a socket in your weapon skeleton you attach clip to. With weapon wiggle, you can wiggle your weapon by moving camera. With weapon wiggle component, you also can turn around. This rotation value rotates the spine of your character in the animation blueprint. You need to update the value of the rotation every tick. Machine gun rotation will override the wiggle function in the rotation events of your character. Here you need to set up your hand socket. Calculated values are used in the animation blueprint. Here you rotate your skeleton bones with these values. You can toggle weapon wiggling in the weapon data table. We have enabled this setting only to the pistol. Your hand should be located in the right way to be able to wiggle your weapon. With interact component, you can interact with objects. You have two settings. The sphere radius, you will see icons of the items if you are near, and the interact distance. You interact with items by Interact interface. You can create your own interactable object. Create a child of interactable actor and initialize the actor variable with the row from the data table if you want. You will initialize this actor with the setting from items data table depending on its type. For example, you have the weapon row in items data table with data table variable initialized. Here you will have weapon type and weapon data table row. The interactable object will be initialized with the settings from this row. In the interactable object, you can override interact event. If you want to have parent functionality, you need to call parent function. Your speed depends on the current angle of the surface. You will slow down if the angle is positive. You can change how your speed depends on the angle in angle walking float curve. In the speed change component, you have a clamp where you limit speed modifier from 0.15 to 3. You can change these values too. You can add a leaderboard to any object. This object needs to have a leaderboard interface and leaderboard component. In the component, you store the characteristics. These characteristics you need to pass in the leaderboard function. You can set any default values of the leaderboard. To change characteristics, you need to call functions add death, add kill, or add scores. For example, we will add kill scores to the object every time we hit it. With this component, you can also toggle leaderboard widget. The winner's leaderboard is being created through this component too. You can also change the amount of scores per kill here. With footsteps component, you have the sound of steps. In this component, you need to initialize the socket of your foot you will trace from. To add new sound of the surface, you need to add a new row to the footsteps data table. You can also add a new surface in the project settings. After you restart your project, you will be able to choose new surface type and configure it however you want. You can add the sound of steps of the surface layer. You need to open layer information and set physics material here. For the new type of surface, you need to create a new type of physics material. Here you need to select the type of the surface. You can also add this physics material to any static mesh. You stored your statistics that you get in the gameplay in the statistics component. This component is being filled with the rows from statistics data table. In this data table, you can create your own statistic. The type of the statistic you can add in the statistic type enumeration. To add some value to the statistic, you need to use add statistics or add weapon statistics functions. To add weapon statistic, you need to use weapon statistic data table. They are separated by the type of the weapon. You need to pass a data table row to these functions, so it is simpler to create a variable of data table row and select your new rows. Now you can test these settings. Once you have collected them into gameplay, you will be able to see them in the menu. As you can see, in the weapon statistics, we have the value and the additional 1 to 3 word. Using pause menu component, you can create pause menus everywhere you want. You can change the pause menu widget class in the component. Assignments component gives you a possibility to store and complete tasks. You can add more tasks to the everyday tasks data table. Here you can choose if you want to have this task by default or if you want to give player possibility to choose it. In this row, you choose the amount of points that player should get to complete the task. You can add task points to task in any place. If you have the reference of your player, you just call add points to task function from the assignments component. The player can have 4 custom tasks, but if you want more, you need to modify max custom tasks value in the assignments widget. You can find this place and many other important places by searching word important in the Find Results tab. The minimap shows the game from top-down perspective. It's a camera that records you from the top. To have this camera in the game, you have Minimap handler blueprint, in which you record everything to the render map texture using scene capture component. You can change the arm length of the spring arm here, if you want to place Minimap camera lower or higher. The quality of the texture you can change by changing its resolution. This texture is used in the UI material and its material rendered in the Minimap widget. In the Minimap widget blueprint, you can change the settings of the minimap behavior or add rotation to the player arrow. You can handle the machine gun using machine gun component. In this component, you can rotate the machine gun or check if you are currently in the machine gun or not. To have a machine gun in the world, you need to drag con minigun blueprint to the world. It's the same thing as one that you connect to hands when you take a weapon. You interact with this object and call machine gun start event in this component. You can modify the interact area or camera placement however you want. To save the location of any object, you need to use save player location component. The save function is called in the save function of the complete shooter library. Let's create a new object. We need to add a component to this object and a live interface, because we save locations only of the actors with this interface. You can change this in the save function of the save location component if you want. In this component, you can turn off the ground trace if you want to load the location of the plane, for example. In the equipment component, you store your weapon, current type of the weapon, and the data table you use. The weapon can be added when you interact with an interactable object. If actor variable of this object is initialized as weapon row, these objects will be added to the equipment component, otherwise to your inventory. In the component details, you can set the default weapon you will equip. To get information about your current weapon, you need to use getCurrentWeapon function. From here, you can get an information about the weapon in items data table or in the weapon data table. You can add a new weapon in the weapon data table and set a new row in the equipment component to have it in the game. You also need to initialize this new row from the weapon data table in the items data table to be able to have this in your inventory. You can shoot only if you have ammo. Your weapon can have its own type of ammo. You can add ammo directly to your inventory, or you can make an interactable object and collect it in the game. You will find more information in the new weapon tutorial. You can add, remove, get items using inventory component. In this component, you can store ammo, grenades, or your own type of item. In this component, you have add item function to add an item or add items function to add an array. You can also remove item or get information of any item in the array. To check if you have this item, you can use function contains. The item is an inventory dynamic structure you can get data table row and amount from. You can use getItem to get item data table information about the item, or get weapon if you are sure that it's a weapon row in items data table. You can also just use Unreal Engine 4 function to get the structure. Let's try to add ammo using button in real time. You also have inventory helper, an actor with box collision. Your item spawns in this box collision if you switch a weapon, for example. In the weapon component, you can set the shooting trace lengths, required weapon sockets, and melee damage when you attack with weapon. Impact data table is a data table with hit events of your bullets. You need to also add your head socket and shooting camera shake. Sockets are required for your weapon. You can learn why and how you need to add these sockets in the weapon creation tutorial. With the weapon component, you can call function to melee attack, start or end shooting. In the impact data table, you can create a new row of the new type of surface. If you need more information, you can use the documentation. Link is in the description. If you need help or have any issue, please contact us in the Discord.